This is the Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we're here to bring you more knowledge, more lights, and more love. I'm very honored to have incredible guests today, Soren Dreier. And we're going to talk about mystical fields and so much more. But first, I need you to follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. If you haven't already, please follow me there. Spotify, there's a follow button. If you listen to your podcast on Spotify, click that follow button. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you go to get your podcasts, click the button that connects us so you get those notifications when new episodes premiere. And also, the biggest thing, tell a friend, tell people you know that love these type of podcasts, that want to learn more about these topics and what these guests have to offer. Tell them about this place. Bring them here. You know them well. Bring them here. midnightonearth.com. Well, I'm very honored to have Soren Dreier with us. He's an incredible human being. So let's just read his bio and then we'll talk to him. Soren Dreier is a healer, psychic, intuitive, and one of the few people in the world that senses the mystical fields and has the ability to tap into them. Soren authors and compiles the hugely popular SorenDreier.com website. He has 25 years experience of readings, healings, and guidance. He provides both practical and spiritual guidance to clients across the globe, and he is well known all over the world for his extrasensory perception and abilities. Soren has appeared on numerous radio and TV shows and has traveled the world as a teacher at seminars and inspirational talks, stunning audiences with his onstage readings and spiritual insight. Soren has studied the mystical fields in Greece and has undergone 30 years of spiritual and psychological training and insight. Soren currently lives in Spain and is the father of 2 children. Soren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Jake. And you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
I'm very honored. I'm very honored that you have me.
We're going to get this information out there. We're trying to help people. We have so much to give, and you have so much to share. So we're really honored to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So let's talk about mystical fields first, before we get into your life a little bit. What are these mystical fields that you're talking about?
These mystical fields is somehow what connects us all. And it's also what we can connect us to if we don't know them, sort of. We can tap into them. And when I started my ESP, I didn't understand it. I was born as a child with extrasensory perception. And I was a very religious child. My parents weren't. I was brought up in a non-religious environment. And I saw angelic beings, I saw spirit, nature spirits, I saw a lot of things, and it wasn't a popular topic in my home, but I had a grandmother who understood it. And so I spent a lot of my time with my grandmother, and I had the ability to sort of say what I wanted to say or make the observations I needed to do, but it didn't fill all day, but she could take me on a walk. She lived across a graveyard, right? And she would tell me, I can't remember this myself, that I would often describe what that person did who was buried there in the ground and what he died from. And some of them she would know, actually. And but my perception was, I'm not special because everybody has this.
So how old were you when you had that experience? Like, when did you first start to notice that you had these gifts?
I think I started to notice around 3-4 toddler years, actually.
Wow.
But the problem is, that toddlers, they often talk to, in brackets, invisible friends, right?
Sure.
And it was today I'm not convinced that it's all invisible friends like society would present them, but it's actually spirits maybe. But and no, I noticed it when I had an incident. I remember being in first grade, and my mother came in to wake me up and said, you really need to go to school now. You need to get up." No, he's sick. The teacher is sick. That's when we had the same teacher all day. "No, he isn't. Get up." And I came home 15 minutes later. He's sick. So we got sent home.
Oh, wow.
And that really scared my parents.
Because they felt like you had access to some information that was outside of their sphere of what was coming in and out, and somehow you knew. And they weren't religious, but you were seeing these angels, these, like you said, nature spirits. And so they had a hard time processing that.
Yeah, I spent a lot of the best thing I had as a kid was my bicycle, because I lived in a little village on the Skagerrak skies in the north of Jutland, with the Vikings and all the headstones and what.
Wow.
And it was magical. And I would take my bicycle and ride out in nature and read the frequencies of nature, tap into the Vikings, but I mostly kept it to myself.
Because you felt like you could be ridiculed, or also because they could just write you off as having a vivid imagination.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of my childhood, but it's not a complaint. It's not a sorrow I have that I was on my lonesome, right? My own lonesome, because I had the gifts the gift of nature, and I just, again, I thought that everybody saw this, but apparently they didn't. So yeah, I spent a lot of time by myself out in nature.
But does it seem like people do have the ability to see these things, but we just have undeveloped filters, or we've placed blocks on the information that's coming in because it doesn't fit into the normal paradigm?
Yeah, I actually think it's a setup, right? I did a post recently about it, the assassination of your ESP, how we are forced into the left brain world as children, right? And if 2 plus 2 doesn't make 4, to me it always made 5, because there were this extra digit I had to contemplate. And so basically we are told that what we are perceiving, what we are seeing, what we are sensing is false information, because they are not there. And I think, according to Rudolf Steiner, who kind of made it his own child psychology, that ability certainly gets pounded when you're about 7 years old, when you enter the school system.
Right. They really don't nurture that. In fact, they suppress it. So then you start to lose those sensory abilities, you think?
Yeah, because for me, the extrasensory perception is not based in the intellect. It's based in the emotional software. And if you can't get society, you can't get the school system, you can't get people to talk about our emotional intelligence other than nag below solar plexus energy. Nag, they love to talk about that, but the heart-based, the throat-based, the pineal gland, the ground-based, no, please stay away with that. We don't understand it. We don't want it. We don't want it. As long as you are bickering on an emotional level, we're comfortable, because then we can do what we like to behind your back. But we don't want you up there saying, "I really love this place. I really love my school pals. I really love this world. It's so beautiful." Nah, there's a problem there, and there's a problem there. Yeah, but it's still beautiful.
So you think that the general paradigm nurtures conflict instead of building bridges of love and connection with each other?
Yeah. First of all, connection, because out of the connection, I see the love emerging, right? We just connected, and I pick up this very positive vibe, and so do you. And
yes.
So the connection comes first, and then we can express our sympathy or love or what we want to label it as. But that's how it goes, I think.
So when did you think, or what was the point you felt like it was your calling to help other people, to use your gifts that you had to heal other people?
I started with educating myself in Copenhagen, University of Copenhagen, in development psychology, but it was very theoretical. But okay, it has to be. But then I went out and got a position for CEO at a very big institution with the mentally disabled, because my drive, my urge was to heal, right? And after that, I think I was there for 5 years. I opened a private institution for boys and girls who had been exposed to incest and all that, and I did that for 5 years, and then I started to work in the field of ESP, but I also used it during those years, but very discreetly. But I could feel a shift in myself, and I thought, no, I won't be in the system anymore. I have to do my own thing. So I let go, and then I started to do these talks and weekends, and I think it was.
So when you had these years of doing this mental health work and other types of traditional work, you were using these gifts that you had in your toolkit, like as part of your strategy, but you didn't really tell people. But that could be why you had such a high success rate, and they promoted you to these high positions, because you were so functional. You were so healing with people.
I was actually headhunted because they wanted to change the system in the early 80s. It was very cold towards especially disabled people, right? And they were living under horrid circumstances. And I said, yeah, I'll take the job if you will allow me to change it. And we changed it to something where, the client or the resident would be the most important person in the room, and not the TV set. And went for walks, trips. We went for a vacation in the Mediterranean, which was unheard of. And we did a lot of cool stuff. And so I think some empathy got infused into it. And that's really what that area needed at that time. I can't take all the credit for that. But
but you were out there then doing talks, doing these readings for people after that point in your career.
Yeah. I hit a crisis, and that was a very important crisis in my life.
Tell me about that.
I was very busy with, I think I had 4 speaking engagement each week, and then a weekend seminar. I was so exhausted. And at one point, when I would go to sleep, it was like a 100-watt light bulb turning on in my head. Everything became light, and I couldn't sleep. And I called a psychologist and a colleague and said, "Karen, I think I'm in trouble." And she said, "Yeah, you might be, but it's not me that you need. You need this person." So I went to a person who were what you would say, just a wise being. And she said, "Okay, would you like regressional therapy?" I said, "Yeah, if that does it." And through that, at some point, at this time, I didn't have any relationship with prior lives or anything. She said, do you believe in reincarnation? I said, I don't know. I don't remember it. Let's try. And then she went straight into it, and so did I. I wasn't hypnotized. I wasn't induced with anything, just closing my eyes, and she would guide me, right? And then I went into these past lives, which were mostly very boring. And but some of them, actually, by the grace of the synchronicity of the universe, got confirmed to me a couple of days later. I was in a past life in South America, and I think it was the Incas, and I were giving this talk, and this guy came up with a book. And normally, when you're out speaking, a lot of people approach you, so there isn't time to talk to anybody. But I thought, okay. He said, I was told in a dream to give you this book. And I said, okay, there's my name and address in it, and if you would kindly return it when you're done. Yeah, sure. On page 50 in that book was the exact same thing I saw in that in that regression, right? And I thought, wow, and
Yeah.
the same, and the same with a couple of others. So I went through, I think, 3 months of a deep existential crisis where I had to turn my inner value system, my true north, into understanding that, wow, I'm eternal. On top of all this, I'm also eternal, and I can prove it, almost, right? So, and from there on, the the different feels in me, the different energetics in me settled, and I understood. My purpose.
I see. And could you say that what you do and what you were discovering could be perceived as magic in a way, in a classical sense? Would they have defined your gifts as magic in prehistory?
No, they wouldn't.
No.
No, it was a natural thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was coming from within.
I recently did an audience for the people in my guidance group called Positive Rituals, about celebrating dusk. You know, how we forget to celebrate dusk. Dusk from 50 years ago, 75 years ago. You know, they would gather on the porch. They would watch the light fade, and they would tell stories, right? And the seer in the family, every family had a seer, would sort of tell stories and connect to the astral plane or whatever. You know, it was an hour of magic.
Right.
Now it's the news.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how these forces that we talked about pre-interview, we talked about some of these forces that are working behind the scenes, they put these things in place energetically on purpose to divert us from experiencing these natural energies that are out there. Because I feel that energy at dusk as well. You feel the transition of day into night, and the same thing around 4 or 5 in the morning when night is turning into day. There's a special feeling. It's almost as if the veil between the worlds is thinner at that time.
Yeah, and spoken in Ayurvedic language, the dusk is the kapha, the density, and the morning is the pitta, the rising. So, and they place the whole system of health on these energies, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So Soren, what is going on in the world right now from your perspective? Clearly, you're a sensitive person, you're highly intelligent, you have an incredible amount of experience. I'm sure your insight on what is going on in the world is very strong. Where are we at as humans? Clearly, it's a transitional time, but what is going on?
I think what is going on an energetical level is both. It's always two sides of the same coin, right? It's both positive and very negative. It's very negative for people who are not in the know of who they really are. It's very sad. For people who are in the know of who they really are, it's a really good opportunity. It's a really good opportunity to lift your energies, not go into victimization, to lift the spirit where you go. And obviously, there are two forces at play. We can go into the biblical way of saying it. There's the darkness and there's the light colliding, right? And we know, and that's my strong belief, Jake, that if we look at history, you know, Soviet Union didn't last that long. Nazi Germany didn't last that long. Even the Roman kingdom didn't last that long. This will pass, and I predicted that it should pass about 2025. And I really hope that prediction is true. Will come to show. But what's going on now is that instead of a mass fascism, or they're trying to introduce mass fascism, they're actually sparking the greatest awakening, I think, in known history.
So you feel like these forces that are out there, there's forces that are in play that are suppressing humanity for some reason. I'm not really sure why they're doing it, but it's clearly out there. You can see these movements trying to keep humanity from evolving, keeping us in a lower, dense, energetic state.
Yeah. Why they're doing it, I think it's because it's ghoulish. They want to suck your energy, and they can suck it if you're scared.
So there are people there's energy beings feeding off the negative energy that we're emitting from our fear, from our anxiety, because of what we're being fed from the outside world. It's creating fear, it's creating anxiety, which then generates this energy that are they beings or people, or do people just love the power and that's where the feeding comes from? What is feeding on them?
Both. They're both non-biological beings known as the dark side ghouls, right? They feed on fear. They feed on fear, and they are having the meal of I think they're all obese right now, but they're still eating. and then we have people who are influenced by the ghoulish frequency, right? That we refer to as uncompromised sociopaths, psychopaths, who doesn't have one single emotion in their entire body, who are hollow souls, who just want power to suck money, to suck admiration, to stimulate their little ego, because the soul is unknown to them, or they wouldn't do this.
So do you feel like those people are humans, though? They have the spark of life, the spark of divinity within them, but something happened in their life that made them into a hollow person? Or were they, was there some kind of biological situation where their brains malformed and that led them to that life?
I think both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah.
Wow. So really, there's this energetic field and there's a series of different fields, and we're all interrelating. Emotions create fields and actions create fields. So how can we strengthen our fields in order to make it through this time of great stress and suppression?
We can step out of fear. My mantra on that is, I'm in this world, but not of it. Because, and Jesus said that, right?
Yes.
I'm in this world, but not of it. And that's the key for me. That's sage advice. Because if we are in a situation we identify with, we are in this world and in it. If we observe a situation and we do not identify with it, we are in this world, but not of it. It's such a huge step going from being the participant to the observer. That doesn't mean we disengage and we don't think it's interesting. Both you and I do, and we do our daily work to tell people this is what's going on. So that doesn't mean we're disengaged. We're just detached from the emotional mud of this situation, and that's what I experience every day. I live in Spain, where the mask is mandatory, right? I don't wear the mask. I wear it around my neck because I always get a little frustrated when people say, "Don't go with mask." Yeah, but it's like 6,000 euro fine, and that's like $7,000. So it's 30 years in jail. Set up a GoFundMe page, and I'll be happy to walk the streets without my mask, right? Because it's a different reality. I mean, but people come and say, "Well, you should wear a mask," and so far I've been good at, just saying, "No, I don't give in to fear. I won't." Yeah, but you're making us all say, "I seriously doubt that." But we have a choice. We have a choice, and it's to be in their world of fear and not of it. And I can't go there. My soul can't go there. My soul feels uncomfortable if I have to submit, if I have to go into sort of this slavery mode of, I don't know.
Well, I think it's because your soul resonates with something differently. It's not divine truth. You're looking at this information that's being fed to you, and it's not truth. So it doesn't resonate with you as something real. It resonates with you as something that's artificial and shouldn't be in place.
Yeah. And they're trying to sell me the fear, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it. There was a beautiful story. There is a beautiful story about Buddha in the mountains. He's giving a lecture in the mountains, and the first day, this student come on to him and say, "You're stupid. Nobody wants to listen to it." And the second day, he goes, "You're even more stupid now. I'm here the second day." And the first day, he has allies. They all attack Buddha. And Buddha says, and the man says, wipe off that silly grin and tell me, why don't you respond to me? Why don't you respond to me? And the Buddha says, if somebody wants to give you a gift and you don't want it, who has the gift? So let the fear be in the person who wants to give it to you. Leonard Cohen has a song lyric that says, when fear knocks at your door, deny delivery.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And so that's sort of a positive affirmation to take with. But it's also because people are basically going into critical mass fear now, that they can't contain it. So they have to act it out. And that's why they get more and more hostile.
So essentially this matrix, though, that you're talking about, Soren, is not a computer-generated matrix like in the movie, but we're talking about something that was created by humans that was put on top of the earth and also just believed to be something that was real. And then all the humans existed in it and we forgot that we created it. But when you're outside of that, you're truly in cosmic consciousness. You're truly shifting away from your singular life as Soren or Jake Weaver. You're shifting away from that, getting in touch with your eternal life, and then being a part of cosmic consciousness. And then you could still work within this world. Doesn't mean, like you said, that you're detached from it. You're just in a place where you're getting information from source, from the universe, and then working within this world to make it better.
Yeah, where you don't identify. And that's so important because I don't walk these streets as a holy person in special clothes. I walk these streets as a citizen, right? But whenever we can do that, we can say, I'm in this world, but not of it. We actually strengthen our bond to the universe, the cosmos, or like I like to refer to, the field of the Christ. And it has nothing to do with you or me feeling better, superior, elitist. It's just, no, I don't want your fear. I don't want your fear. It's the same as a person telling you should really lock your bike, Jake, because it can get stolen. No, I don't believe it'll get stolen. So it's a fear-based reaction. It's a stupid reaction if you're in downtown, in the city you live, right? Then it's called pray to Jesus, but lock your bike. but it's not giving into all this fear porn. But fear is such substantial meal for other people. They get energy from dominating you. They get energy from everything. And
well, like you said, think about all the people that have used fear as a weapon of control and destruction and genocide throughout history. And then here we are right now in this time in human history, and here's fear being used as a weapon against consciousness right now, and it's on a global scale. Yeah,
and it's I posted an article last week about this. Got revealed that the British government had this PSYOPs group of psychiatrists who knew how to put the fear of God into people, the fear of COVID into people, and so they basically operated from a game plan. Was I surprised? And were you surprised, Jake?
No, because I've been studying this for probably as long as you have, even though you're older than me. I started very young. So I know because I've been watching these patterns. I've been watching this develop over 30 years. And anybody that has a little bit of intelligence that can just look at what's out there publicly can put the pieces together and see how this is all being manipulated for some end. What do you think their goal is? Do you think these nefarious forces, do you really think their goal is to just dominate the world and make all humans slaves except for the elites? Or is it demonic? Really, you think the first option?
That's the payoff of politicians and bureaucrats and whoever have this need for controlling other people on a higher level. it's fueled by these ghouls, these ghoulish beings, non-biological beings that control that level of the cake, so to speak.
But how does that work when everything's made out of God? Like all these beings, the ghouls, the angels, the aliens, and us and the earth, it's all made out of God. So how is this happening within this sphere? Are we just meant to learn the lessons from these experiences?
Yeah, I think. And when I said Jake, and that was something I really needed to contemplate a long time, because it pushed some boundaries in me. If we can say, yeah, being in this world but not of it could be the key to not going into all this fear, and it makes us observant, right? It's on the same level as if we are in a discussion at the workplace and we don't really say, and we identify with it, and we don't say it, but when we come home we think, I should have said, I could have said, oh, this is what's going on. That puts us in the observer so we can see the dynamic at display, right? But if we can say we're in this world and not of it, maybe the God force, Jake, is in this world but not of it. It doesn't interfere. It doesn't interfere.
Interesting.
It interferes on a personal level by what we see as divine intervention, but not in the big scheme of things. It doesn't. Because we don't have a controlling God.
So that's what you have, the conclusion that you've come to is that the divine, that whatever that mystery is letting Earth kind of go based on free will and people's choices and develop on its own. But there is some encouragement.
Yeah. Yes and no, but it has to be detached. It's like Jesus says, if you lift a stone, you can find me there. If you take a piece of wood, you can find me there. He's talking about the unified field.
Right.
The God force is everywhere. But the God force doesn't come and say, like an entity, into whatever institution we have on this planet, you are not allowed to do that. The God force doesn't work that way.
Yeah, clearly we've seen that throughout history, that we wish that would have happened and it didn't.
No, it doesn't. Because where are we heading, Jake, on an energetical level, you and me and everybody else? We are gods in the making. We are celestial beings. So it wouldn't help us if the God force thought so. But I'm sure the God force is working very stealth, very hidden, and it's working through people on the planet, and that's fine. That's fine.
So it does show up in those moments, helping people, working with people on the planet. And I think that also, if you intentionally choose to tap into that God force, then that God force will respond and work with you.
Yes, indeed. But it doesn't change the collective. It changes the collective via you and me, via 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 500 million other people.
Well, what do you think about the concept of people raising their vibration? And if enough people raise their vibration, then that will change the prevailing frequency.
Yes, that will change it.
Okay.
That's critical mass. Now there's too much. I'm sorry about my expression. Now there's too much God force in the world. So now we can't make this shit anymore. We can't make the shit fly. The fear shit fly anymore. So we better stand down. Yeah, that moment will come. And it's critical mass moment. But we're not there yet. And
it takes people developing on their own, building themselves spiritually, personal development, becoming a more loving person, becoming a more service-oriented person. And if each person does that, eventually, like you said, we'll hit that critical mass.
We'll hit the critical mass, yes.
Well, that's good. That feels good to know that that's coming.
Yeah, but that's the way I can explain it from an energetical point of view. And many might agree on, because I thought, whoa, that's kind of a statement to say the God force is in this world, but not of it, but it's detachment. What was Buddha? What was Jesus? Detached.
Right.
That's the God force, right? But detachment is such a tricky word, because detachment can also be understood as, not interested. It's not up to my little ego to help this situation. No, no, no. I'm so detached. I'm so spiritual. So I really don't give a shit. And that's being detached. No, it isn't.
No, it's being
That's being a
callous.
that's a sociopathic trait.
Right.
To say I'll help these people, but I don't want anything for it because I see it as my purpose on this planet. And that's quite a different starting point.
Well, let's talk about the energy of friction, because it seems like right now there's some sort of suppression of tension. We were talking about pre-interview. Those forces that we're talking about that are seeming to be in control of how information and things move, governments and things like that. They want everybody to think the same way. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. If we see with the woke movement, right? They don't allow these outer perimeters point of view anymore, which really isn't outer perimeter. They're closing very, very much in on the mainstream thoughts, the mainstream way of conducting yourself. I never understood why social media has to censor anybody, because if a guy is a racist and he want to talk about that and he says I'm a racist, fine with me, because he's the best racist repellent I can ever find. He's the best, and if he doesn't create that friction within my consciousness, I'm not able to stand up to real racism instead of woke racism. And so we're really dependent on these very different understanding of a problem, very different interpretation of what's going on, but to create friction within us, within our consciousness, because friction is energy, and energy is evolvement. If they take that away, and that's behind the woke, they're removing friction. Without friction, there can't be creativity, there can't be evolvement, there can't be anything other than, okay, we'll all follow what is dictated, because we really can't make up our own opinion. That's so dangerous, because everything evolves through friction. Our heart beats friction. We make love friction. We contemplate friction. Everything we do, we drive from one place to another, friction. We die, friction. We get born, friction. Everything is friction. And if they block it, we are FUCKED.
Correct.
And that's why it's so important to create friction back and say, no, I won't take it. I won't have it.
Yes, we need to have these places for open dialogue. And even if you don't agree with the person, like you said, they're extremely racist. Well, at least you know, A, that person is racist, and B, maybe you can help them evolve. Maybe you can give them information in a polite and, maybe you don't agree with them. Obviously, you don't agree with racism, but you give them information that might help them change their perspective. And then they realize that the racism, that frequency is wrong and they shouldn't exist within that frequency. And then they become a better person. But without that polarity, then how are people going to grow?
We won't know. We won't know.
It's really interesting. Why is humanity in this place right now? Is the friction coming from these ghouls, coming from these nefarious forces in a greater sense in order to create the energy to bypass all that? Do you think that's what's going on?
Yeah, on one level, Jake, because if you get submitted to friction, it can be interpreted as confrontation, right? Confrontations are always friction, but they're high impact friction. So people who are fear-based, they don't want a confrontation. They create no friction. It's us, you and me, that's the problem. We create the friction.
Right. We're the ones questioning. We're the ones pointing out the hypocrisies and inconsistencies. So without that, then it's just completely homogenized with no real room for evolution.
Yeah. If I present an idea to you and you say, no, Soren, you totally misunderstood that, I can get girly offended, or I can say, okay, Jake, what did I misunderstand, right? And we have a situation of friction. That's not a confrontation, but a friction. You're trying to teach me something, I'm listening, right? And that's how we evolve. If that goes away, not cool.
Right. We really need that friction to grow, like we were saying. Okay, Soren, I want to talk to you a little bit more about these mystical fields because I looked up the definition of electromagnetic because everybody talks about, spiritual people, conscious people talked about how we are electromagnetic beings. So I looked up the word electromagnetic, just so people that are new, that people who are just being exposed to this information, they're trying to understand. And it said relating to the interrelation of electric currents or fields and magnetic fields. So all matter, humans, life, animals, everything is just a series of interrelated electrical currents and magnetic fields. So how do our magnetic fields interact with each other? How does that work?
It obviously works on a frequency level. And going some years back, I tried to solve the mystery of ESP. And I asked people also with ESP how they perceived the ESP was in its anatomy, right? But I understood it when I studied quantum physics, because in quantum physics, everything is connected. And the same with electromagnetism. Everything is connected.
Earlier in human history, before our continued indoctrination into a more material existence, were we more energy based? Were we understanding more that we had this interconnected field that we were a part of, and that was lost over time? Was it more of a general understanding? If you think of ancient Egypt and you think of the great mystical cultures of prehistory, did they understand this more?
Yeah, I think they did, especially the Australian Aboriginals.
Really?
They communicate through, I don't remember the name of their musical instrument, but it's almost like hearing a Tibetan monk, right?
Yeah, the didgeridoo.
Yeah. And that pulses frequencies that are connected to nature.
Really?
Yeah, they attract whales in the south of Australia with them.
Wow.
And then they watch the whale.
That's incredible. So they did understand this in prehistory, but as we became more survival oriented, as we became more obsessed with material things in a general sense, as humans, just collectively, we started to lose the understanding of our electromagnetic connections, of our connectedness as a species.
Yes. The Native American Indian, they had these, it's a well-known story. They had these soldiers during World War II who the long hair was connected to the universe, and it was the antenna. And when it got cut, they couldn't find the track.
Right. I have heard that story. Yes, they cut their hair as Army issue haircuts. When you join the Army, you get a haircut. These Native Americans had very long hair. That's kind of why I have long hair. I have very long hair. I think about that all the time. Yeah. And, they cut their hair. They lost their tracking abilities. Then the Army decided, hey, let's let them keep their hair. And when they did, they maintained that ability. So there's something about our hair that connects us to these fields that are out there that we pick up this information.
And our skin and our nervous systems and our energetical vortexes, our chakras, right?
Right.
Yeah. But if we take the knowledge and the tradition down from that, we perceive ourselves as being non-connected. So we have our cell phone.
Right.
Be happy with that.
But isn't the social media, the cell phones, aren't they reawakening this collective consciousness because we're able to interact with people all over the world? Just like I'm talking with you in Spain right now with our technology.
Yeah.
But just the fact that you can instantly communicate with people all over the world, is that somehow strengthening our collective field?
Yes, if you're in the know about it. But if you're not, you get dependent on these machines, right?
Right, because they do create endorphins and other reactions in our brain.
Yeah, and we have outside the cell phone, outside Skype, outside everything, still telepathic connection to each other.
It's really interesting because you can feel if you're texting with someone and you're waiting for their response, you can feel them reading your text. And as you await their response, as if you're having a traditional conversation where the energy is going back and forth. It's really interesting how that works. So the people that are tuning into that, maybe they're gaining something from that because they're seeing that there's energy outside of this dimension. Maybe it does have some sort of beneficial effect, even though it's suppressing so many people and keeping them addicted.
It depends on if they are your master or you still see yourself as the master of your device.
That's a really good point, Soren.
Yeah, it is because that's what's going on, right? We become dependent.
Are these phones a step-by-step process to implantable devices like a microchip? It seems like these phones are the external microchip, and as they become more advanced and more advanced, these forces that wish to keep humanity down will tell us that we should have them implanted, and then that's going to affect us. How do you think that's going to affect us?
It's going to affect us into submission.
Because they'll be able to control our fields with that chip internally.
If they cut your feet, Jake, you're all by your lonesome. They're doing it in China, right, with the social point system.
Right, the social credit score.
Yeah. So that's kind of, both the carrot and the stick. The carrot is you feel connected. The stick is if you do something out of bounds, disconnect.
I know it's really terrible because we don't want to give any governmental agency that level of control over our lives. Even here in America, we always viewed, at least when we founded this country, we viewed government as a necessary evil to be kind of kept in check and never really let out of a certain boundary. But now in 2021, that was back in the 1700s. Back now in 2021, American government is pretty much totalitarian. It's getting very close to that totalitarian point.
Yeah. Have you noticed, Jake, that people are communicating with smileys?
Yes, the emojis.
Yeah, they're taking our emotional language away. I don't have to tell you I love you. I can just send a heart.
But could that be kind of like hieroglyphics in a way, like where the symbols represent?
No. They're taking our emotional language away because it's also what is known as meta messaging, right? I really don't like what you do. Heart emoji. What the hell does that mean?
Right, it's a conflicting message. It's just like
yeah. And really, excuse me, but I didn't like what you said there. Heart and praying hands in a row. Why not just? I'm getting confused here.
Right. Well, yeah, it's simplifying.
Because simple is the strongest thing we have as goes for communication. But if you examine the emotional language of teenagers, it's very poor.
It is. I have teenage children, and I often look at their lack of grammar skills and their lack of, communication generationally. It's like their generation. It's not them personally. And it frustrates me a little bit. I was like, hey, let's figure out how to communicate more effectively, more thoroughly versus these very short sound bites that don't take a lot of brain power to process. I think that's part of it. Is they don't want you to think very much. So if you can process the information with the least amount of energy as possible, then that's one more method of keeping humanity suppressed.
Yeah, also by taking the emotional language away.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about these things, but the positive thing is that it does seem like collectively we're on the road to a new earth, a heaven on earth scenario. And this is just kind of the growing pains, the birthing pains of a new consciousness. What are your thoughts about that?
Exactly what you're saying.
You agree with that statement?
Yeah.
So What are these birthing processes, and how long do you think this period of humanity will last? I know we talked about how these negative points in human history only last short times. How long do you think it will be until we reach this new Earth? I know it's correlating with the age of Aquarius and various other factors. I mean, is it on the horizon, or are we talking like hundreds or even 1,000 years away?
I think it's 50 years away.
Wow. So if that level of growth is going to happen that fast, that means that we're going to be dealing with some serious stress and friction, like you said, to push us into that world.
What I hope for, Jake, in my soul, is that another Carrington event can put a lot of these things out of business, right? The solar flare and the system goes down. And we're entering a very, very intensive solar flare cycle of the sun. So all communication could go in a day.
Yes. Yeah, it would be like an EMP pulse.
If the media doesn't work, the fear factory doesn't work.
Yes, it does seem that with the instant communication, with the ability to interact with everybody instantly, it did create a situation that held us back because they're able to spread the information, the fear, that much faster.
Yeah. And that's the God force at work by not creating the event, but having the synchronicity of putting this corona shit show into that solar cycle.
Exactly. The synchronicity is we're in this bubbling thing, and then the solar flare comes and wipes out the ability for us to communicate electromagnetically with our devices. And then we're just left back with the natural paradigm, the earth and the divine paradigm that's there already.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot to think about.
So I think it's both, Jake. It's both the race of the field of consciousness awareness, but I also think it's the planet responding to all that fear. Our planet is a living being, right?
Yes.
And if we reach critical mass, so do Mother Earth. And she will start to cast out the fear, cast off the fear, together with our solar system, our galaxy, with our sun. And I think it'll all go into one big celestial event.
Right, because the earth, a living being, the earth will feel this dis-ease, this ailment, and will want to correct it via the means that it has to correct it. It's outside of our understanding, but the earth understands it, and then it will push that fear vibration off the planet as it wants to heal on its own.
Yeah, and want to heal the people on it, the beings on it.
So is there an extraterrestrial component? Are there angels? Are there intermediary beings that are coming in our dimension to help us get to that new Earth scenario?
Yeah, on a personal level, yes.
Tell me about that more.
It's I experience with the clients I have, they feel a closeness to celestial forces. They feel angelic beings. They feel these non-biological beings of light being very closer than ever. And I don't question that. I do the same in my life. I feel a strong alignment to what I like to describe as the field of the Christ, right? With all the mythology in that. And
yeah, me too.
And angelic beings. And it's wonderful.
And so even though, like we were talking about earlier, the divine may be in this world, but obviously not of it, and letting it kind of go on its own, there are still these extra-dimensional intermediary forces like extraterrestrials or angels that are working to help us.
They are not under celestial lockdown. They're free to do what they want, and they want to help.
Because it seems like, there's so much life out there in the universe. And in order to be able to travel to other galaxies, you have to reach a certain level of spiritual development as a being in order to access the higher technology that you would need in order to do that. So all of those beings that are out there looking in on us, we just talked about last episode that there are over 1,000 galaxies that have a direct line of sight with Earth. And so these beings from these galaxies, they're watching us and they're seeing us in this lower evolutionary state, and they want us to evolve. They want us to do better. They want us to get to where they're at.
Yeah. But they also know the road to getting where they are. And it's a road paved with mystery until everything transcends.
Right.
Paved with agony, paved with suffering, maybe.
That is part of the deal. But then when you leave this dimension after you die, you realize that it was all an illusion, and every aspect of it was perfectly intertwined by the divine, which is very interesting to process, because you think about the good things, the bad things that happen, and yet all of it is seeming to be part of some divine plan, and everything is kind of perfect as it is.
Yeah. Yes. But we mustn't give in to that. Everything is not as it should be necessarily right now, right? Because that's kind of a New Age argument I can't subscribe to. Everything is maybe as it should be, but everything isn't looking good. So we have to change it.
Right. And maybe that action of change is part of the divine plan. You making the choice to do that change is part of the plan that was already in place.
If you don't act upon something, well, there's no celestial forces who will help you, because there's nothing they can help you with.
Right. But when you do tap into that, you do ask for that help. Let me tell you, I can tell you personally, that help is there, and they will help you from other dimensions get to where you need to go.
Exactly.
Which is amazing, and then it shows the vastness of the divine experience. Because
but before they would relate to your frequency or mine, we have to show them that we are ready to take on our task. We have to set one foot in front of the other. If we don't, they stay away.
Ah, right.
Because they're not forcing you to do anything. It's like the law of attraction, right? This person, a person in great misery, can say, well, I'm in great misery. And the law of attraction thinks, well, she loves misery, so we'll give her some more. Right? Because we get what we send out there. If we think, no, I like to find a boyfriend, well, get out of the house. We'll help you. Right?
Right. You're not going to find a partner if you don't leave the house.
It is that simple. I once did a reading. It was in the start of my career. I remember because she called me. I said, yeah, you will find a boyfriend. Yeah, you will, in November. She called me in February. I said, I didn't find a boyfriend in November. I'd like to complain. I said, okay, what did you do? What did you do? Nothing. What? You didn't go out? No. Why? Because you said he would be there. Oh, so we're talking about the mailman or what? Yeah.
Because he's the only person that came around. She had to actually go out to some place to interact with other humans in order for the experience that you felt to take place. But she completely closed that with her free will, which is kind of interesting, because it shows that free will can interact and kind of interject with things that are potentially pre-planned.
Yeah, that complaint taught me a lot because we have to provide the circumstances to let the universe do its job. If we don't, it can't get in. It can't get to us.
Right. If you can't find the circumstances, you have to make the circumstances.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. So, Soren, I did talk about earlier when we read your bio that you had 2 children. So I have to ask you, do any of your children show any signs of the same gifts that you have?
Yeah, they both do sort of very stealthed. And one is a very successful YouTuber, and my daughter is working with vulnerable people.
Really? And do they
But
use some of these gifts like the ESP, like the energy reading that you use?
yeah, they use empathy a lot.
Wow. How does that make you feel as a dad?
Proud.
Yeah. I bet
Very.
that. And were they ever questioning of your abilities when they were younger, or were they always supportive?
They were always supportive. I took them to some events, but they didn't grow up in a spiritualized home. I that's not me. Children can evolve, and they are self-taught, and I'm very proud of them. Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. So Soren, we're addressing the world right now. Me and you are having this incredible conversation. We've touched on so many subjects that are positive, that'll help people grow and expand, and really, really high frequency discussion we're having. But is there something that we didn't talk about that you want to leave people with, that you feel like people should really know right now with the world the way it is?
I think people should be aware of the impending lockdowns that's underway right here for the summer, especially in Europe, maybe.
Yes.
But also, don't make any big Christmas plans, because what we're seeing, the pattern is that they target people where they're most vulnerable, around Easter, around Christmas, around their vacation. That's where people really, really feel lonely, right? If they can't be together as a unit, as a family unit, or with friends. And until they have the vaccines number they need, they'll keep on stressing these high impact emotional traditions we have, like summer vacation, like Christmas, like Easter. So watch out for that.
So it seems like they're pushing these energetic kind of like experiences where you feel like you're going to get out of lockdown, you feel like you're going to have this freedom, and then as soon as these big events come around, like summer or Christmas, like you're saying, that's when they instill the new rules, and then you're emotionally crushed, you're energetically crushed.
It's shock and awe. And I have one more thing.
Yes.
Don't be grateful. When they lift the lockdown, don't be grateful. When they give you freedom, don't be grateful. That is the Stockholm Syndrome. You never did anything wrong. Do not be grateful for them giving you 2 months freedom. Be grateful to yourself towards you endured it, but don't be grateful to the system.
Right, because they were the one that put it there in the first place. And like you're saying, it's Stockholm Syndrome, where you start to sympathize with your captors' motivations.
Yeah. We're all trapped in the cinema, and you can buy a hot dog. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful. No.
But are they doing this to correlate with some evolutionary growth period that's happening in humanity? Is that also by design? Like, are we at a growth stage, and then the response to that would be these almost draconian lockdowns?
Yeah, indeed.
Wow.
Sometimes, it's not cool to be a pawn on the chessboard when we're talking about us citizens. It's much better to be the board, to know how the game is played.
And at some point, we'll have to say no as humans. If they keep pushing, if they keep instilling more and more draconian situations, we'll have to rise up as humans and say no. At some point, no, we will not accept that. We will not do those things. Just like in World War II, you think about what happened there. At some point, they had to say no, and the world fought back.
Yeah.
Perhaps we may have to
create some friction.
You create some
serious friction.
Soren, thank you so much for being on the show. I want to tell everybody about your website. It's SorenDreier.com. That's Soren, SOREN, Dreier, DREIER.com. You can go there. You can learn more about Soren and what he does. He has personal guidance sessions that he can create with you where he's like a life coach. He does remote healing. He does readings. There's so much that he does that if you need that type of service, if you need that experience, he's there for you. And I highly recommend it. Please go there and check out his website. All of you out there, it's mind blowing. Soren's an incredible person, and he dedicated his life to service, and just like we are. And I'm super glad that he's here with us. Soren, thank you. Please hold on the line as we hit the outro music, and we'll talk a little bit more. People, we'll see you next week. Midnight on Earth, y'all.
Thank you very much, Jake.
Hey, everybody. Still here. This is the afterthought. This was our shortest episode, clocking in at an hour and 5 minutes. So I thought I'd create a little bonus content for this episode and just tell you how much I appreciate you being a listener of this podcast. It's now getting out there to 66 countries around the world. There's probably more. I haven't checked since the last time I looked, which was about a week ago. Thank you all for being incredible participants in this forum that is attracting all kinds of really positive spiritual people and really funny people, just really good humans. It's just attracting good humans that want to share their information. So they're sharing that information. And we're creating something really special here. I really appreciate it. I don't really know what else to say. This is the first afterthought. I think that what I might do is record these post-interview thoughts and feelings, because I don't really have a space for that currently. As I always say, this podcast is evolving. It's changing. It grows organically as I grow. And what you'll find is it's never going to be the same as it was. Just like we all should be personally developing, we're never going to be the same as we were before. We want to be better. I want this podcast to be better. So maybe after we do these incredible interviews, I'll create a segment. I think I'm going to call it Afterthought. The Afterthought. And I'll be able to summarize and postulate on some of the things that we did during that interview. It's an interesting idea, and it's a way for us to connect. Just like myself and Soren talked about, we're creating these connections through these fields. When you're listening to me, our mystical fields are connecting. They're merging. I can feel you. All of you around the world, we're feeling each other. This is the newest sphere that Jacob Wyatt was talking about. It seems like we're all talking about the same thing. I don't know what else to say. I'm just having fun. This is all stream of consciousness. With the background music, it's very hard for me to edit anything out. I never edit anything out. But I do a little post-production just to make it sound as good as I can. Because I want you, the listener, to have an incredible experience listening to this podcast. So, I guess one more thing I can ask you to do, send me an email. I love getting emails telling me what you think about this show. Telling me what you feel about these guests, how these guests make you feel. So send me an email. Tell me what you think. In closing, this is the very first afterthought, bonus content after the outro music. I'm not going to remind people. You just have to know. You're just going to keep letting it play. Keep letting it go. And you'll get more content. We'll have more fun together. You'll get the afterthought. Thank you again for being a listener to this podcast. Thank you for following me on the social media platforms that are required by the means of information dispersion. I guess that's all you can really say. Thank you for following me on all the platforms that you follow me on. Thank you for telling other people about me. And this podcast is really not about me, it's about the guests. I'm just the facilitator. The catalyst. Just like you are. Be the catalyst. There's a new one. Be the catalyst. Be the agent of change in your sphere of influence. Or not. Like I said, this is all stream of consciousness. To give you something a little extra. Some after time. The midnight on Earth universe. We'll see you next week. Thanks for sticking around to make this podcast episode just a little bit longer